Hello Gemini, and welcome to your monthly horoscope for November for the Sun or the Ascendant. I'm going to give you an overview of the key strands of this month before then going on to give you a much more detailed analysis, so please stay with me. As this month begins, we have a lot of energy in the sign of Scorpio, which of course is about intensity and transitions. The Sun and Mars in the sign of Scorpio for you is about life structure, your efficiencies, your organisation, anything to do with diet, fitness, nutrition, your job, and having Mars there, which is in dignity in the sign of Scorpio, it's the co-ruler of this sign, is really good for you in terms of giving you an uplift in physical vitality. But there is going to be quite a polarity between the sign of Scorpio and the sign of Taurus, because there's a full moon in Taurus on the 19th, but also Uranus, the planet of the unexpected, which has been really affecting your nervous system, I think, much more over the last year in its square with Saturn. Well, that is going into opposition with the Sun immediately in the first 5 days of this month, then your ruler Mercury, and then Mars. So that's going to create some potentially discordant energies where you might want to focus on the physical plane. Uranus keeps drawing you back to the emotional, spiritual and psychological side of things. So that's the big picture. And if you're new to my channel, I'd be honoured if you would subscribe. Please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. If you would like to get your free written horoscope fired to your device each morning, I've been writing these for over 25 years and my work is featured on some major platforms around the world and Britain's most read daily newspaper. And see beneath this video and you can subscribe and get yours free too. And finally, with year 2022 racing up, if you want to order your personal horoscope for next year, your forecast, and order it now, you can get the rest of this year free, plus your character analysis and 30% off. Please again see the link below. So as we come into the month of November, Gemini, your ruler Mercury is still in the part of your horoscope to do with being much more outgoing, creative, and anything to do with dates and sociability. But of course it went through that big retrograde, and on the 3rd of this month it finally emerges from shadow. So although the retrograde began on the 27th of September, it actually came to an end on the 18th of October, but it's only on the 3rd of this month that it finally comes out of shadow. So something to do with a talent, some flair you have, or some way of moving forwards more joyfully, which maybe has gone through something of a quixotic journey, that can become a bit clearer to you by the 3rd of this month. But it is true on the first day of November, the Sun is still squaring with Saturn, and that happened in the last 5 days of October. So the Sun's in your 6th house of structure, discipline and sacrifice, and Saturn is in the 9th house of freedom and independence. Now Saturn of course can be quite a limiting energy, although it does give us rewards if we really put the application in. But I just think right at the start of this month you could feel a bit niggled with the amount that you do for others. That is possible, and because there's such a lot of energy in your sector of sacrifice throughout this month, you just always need to keep reminding yourself that your needs are equally as important as others. Now that's going to be especially so in week 2, because Mars, the planet of passion, in the 6th house, along with the Sun, is squaring up with Saturn. So first of all, on the first day it's the Sun and Saturn, and then it's Mars and Saturn. So the same sense of resentments can start to be manifested if you're feeling that your need to do your own thing is being cramped too much by those responsibilities and obligations. But if you really do want to seize the opportunity this month provides to work harder, be quite focused on things, and perhaps narrow your focus, then a lot can be achieved, because Mars in the sixth house is quite good in a way, because it's not so needing of individual attention, because Mars is the planet of ego and gratification and instant gratification. So the sixth house sees you more able to help others, be that much more sacrificing. But that ninth house energy with Saturn and Jupiter, although they're now going forwards, which is obviously helpful, is just reminding you, don't get too kind of frazzled trying to be perfect this month, because you're a free spirit and you have a gift for doing all sorts of different activities and multitasking and getting on with lots of different types of people, having various strands. And I think this month you could find yourself wanting to be a bit more serious about some core areas of your life and making them work better. But when we get to the new moon of the 4th, the opportunity to, update your approach to what you're eating and drinking and how much exercise you're getting, it's really strong. But the electric energies of Uranus is in opposition to the Sun for the first week of this month. So what we get is a polarity between the sign of Taurus, which for you is the 12th house of reflection, quiet, withdrawal, can be secret enemies. It can be sudden, with Uranus in the mix, sudden energies coming up that are unexpected, or a kind of hard to pinpoint restlessness that is almost like walking along. Sorry if I've used this analogy before, but I think it's very true of Uranus in the 12th house. You're walking along and you think you've got like a little stone in your shoe, and so we take our shoe off and we shake out the stone and we put our shoe back on and start walking, and still something keeps pressing into the bottom of our heel. That's kind of what Uranus in the 12th house is like, because the 12th house is what's concealed, what's a bit out of view. So it can be your shadow side. It may be parts of your own nature or own activities that you're not quite so conscious of. Whereas the energy of the Sun and Mars, and then from the 5th, when your ruler Mercury moves into Scorpio, they're all asking you to really be grappling with the detail of things. And then just as you're grappling with the detail of things, there's Uranus sort of poking you in the back in a kind of electric and surprising way. Could be somebody, for example, at work who doesn't actually quite approve of you, doesn't think you're very productive, thinks you work hard in the wrong ways, could be quite critical, but don't expect them necessarily to tell you, because Uranus in the 12th house means that they might suddenly blurt something out to somebody else, but they may tell you. And then with, on the 5th, Mercury moving into the sign of Scorpio, you do have Venus, the planet of love and affection, moving out of your sector of relating and into your 8th house, which is very in keeping with the energies of Scorpio. So I can only say to you that this month is incredibly Scorpionic, with the new moon in Scorpio, with Pluto and Mars, the co-rulers, the co-regents of Scorpio, modern and higher octave Pluto and the traditional Mars, very much to the fore. And then you have Venus moving into your 8th house. So what does that mean? Well, Venus into the 8th house can be good for your finances, but it does go into shadow on the 18th, because on the 19th of December, Venus is going into retrograde. Now, Venus usually takes about 28 days to pass through each sign, but it's going to be in your 8th house of potential financial reward, particularly in the business-like Capricorn, through to the 6th of March. But Venus, of course, is also about relationships, and the 8th house can be about sex and deep devotion and where we're most invested. So a fascinating journey could await you around your love life between now and the early part of March, particularly when Venus goes alongside Pluto in December this year, and they're pretty well within 3 degrees alongside each other. And then on your solar return, they're also aligned together, but Venus in a retrograde. So something to do with a talent of yours could come through financially this month in a positive way, particularly with that sixth house energy encouraging you to streamline your services or make the most of the talent you've got in a more efficient way, which is very sixth house energy. But the eighth house energy accentuates your business acumen. And also because the sun in week 2 forges a stunning sextile to Pluto, the planet of transformation, also along with Venus in your 8th house, where it's been since 2008, that is a very positive link in week 2 of this month. So there is real potential to use your focus on a narrow strand of objectives, being very efficient, doing something that assists others, but without losing your sense of identity. Those are the warning energies of Saturn, and it's square with Mars in week 2. It's square with the Sun on day 1, and also on the full moon, which occurs on the 19th in your 12th house. That's also squaring up with Jupiter in your sector of freedom too. So you don't want to overload yourself with too many commitments this month. So the best way to make progress is narrow that focus, do the things you are doing well, but do give yourself time for your own pursuits, so you don't start to develop a sense of resentment that you're doing too much for others, or others feel, you feel others are taking you for granted. But that kind of balance between the pragmatic and practical and tangible side of your existence and the more psychological side of your existence is challenged between the 12th and the 15th, when Mercury goes opposite Uranus, and then in week 3 when Mars goes opposite Uranus. And that's a really tasty link, because what that can do is create a lot of electric energy, and almost like the harder you work, the more adrenal energy you will be creating, and then you could find out your system is just pumped full of cortisol. So I think it's important to try to keep taking those breaths, to try to absorb the energy of Uranus more and more. It's going to be with you a long time yet. So just breathe into it, accept your vulnerabilities, be less fearful of your perceived weaknesses. Don't feel that other people are necessarily out to get you, although it's possible you could encounter some key opponents this month. I'm only being honest. And then by the 19th, although that full moon is in your 12th house, it is asking you really to balance your psychological welfare and your overall health in a holistic way. The angle with Pluto is very, very good. So you can discover a lot. And the 2 weeks from the 19th, I think, can be very helpful to you. I think the energy of Mars could be more challenging than the energy of the Sun and the Moon in a way this month. And then on the 22nd, the Sun moves into your sector of relating, and it's followed on the 24th by Mercury. Now that's an interesting one, because Mercury is your ruler, and the 7th house in the sign of Sagittarius, Mercury is said to be in detriment. But I think it's one of those afflictions that actually is quite mild, because Sagittarius energy is quite similar to you in the sense that they have a love of knowledge. Your love of knowledge is quick. You need constant, urgent stimulation, whereas Sagittarius can be a bit more, the bigger picture, but it is still about processing information. So I think Mercury here, although it's debilitated technically, it's not one of the worst ones by any stretch of the imagination. So really, the last 10 days of this month, the focus is much more on relationships. And there's a terrific link between your ruler Mercury and Saturn in the last few days of the month, which is very stabilizing. So where you find accords, where you feel that you're talking to people who have a similar language to you, whether it is the actual language you're speaking, or it is more of a philosophical, cultural, spiritual language that you can relate to, the accords that you can reach, whether it's in a business contract, a friendship, even a romantic potential, can be very strong as the end of this month develops. Also, just to say, Jupiter continues its semi-sextile with Pluto all through this month, which is pretty good. Jupiter is now travelling forwards in your sector of truth and widening your horizons and travel. Now, obviously, travel has been hugely affected by COVID restrictions, and it just depends on your personal relationship to those restrictions, how comfortable you feel with traveling, or how able you are in the state, territory, or country or continent that you exist within. But I think there could be a potential to travel more linked to work, and anything linked to overseas business interests or finance can also be positive for you. Which takes us back to that Venus transit, which may in some ways be the kind of hidden bonus, or also the kind of hidden challenge of this month, because ordinarily when Venus moves into the 8th house, it can trigger some good fortune for someone close to us. So for example, if we're in a close romantic partnership, perhaps a partner gets an insurance payout, or a premium is refunded, or they get some kind of bonus unexpectedly at work, or there's some kind of legacy that comes to them. But it doesn't necessarily exclusively have to come through a partner. It could come through your own efforts, and the 8th house is very much to do with business, and it is to do with banking, as is the sign of Scorpio. So the more attention to detail you show with your resources this month, the balance between the 6th house energy for you and the 8th house energy of Scorpio can really see you make progress on the physical plane. But I think on the emotional and spiritual plane, you have to be aware of the challenge of Uranus, which is going to be revving up your nervous system throughout this month, as it has been for some time, and it does continue in its retrograde through to January. It's been a real pleasure being with you, Gemini. Take care, good luck, and goodbye.